So our next panelist is Dr. John Roche. Dr. John Roche is a Chief Science Advisor to New Zealand's Ministry of Primary Industries, where he leads programs advancing sustainable agriculture and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. He leads MPI's Science Forum, chairs the Science Governance Group at the MPI, and the Independent Mycoplasma bovis Strategic Science Advisory Group. John is a member of the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisors Forum and is an adjunct professor at the University of Auckland's School of Biological Sciences. John?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. And look, I'd just like to acknowledge Frank and Charles and the wider team on the leadership in pulling this panel, this forum together, and the discussions we're going to have over the next couple of days. So I went the wrong direction. Hopefully not the same as last night. Perfect. So look, New Zealand, for those that don't know, those that haven't been south of the equator and across the Pacific, New Zealand has a relatively unique system of farming. There's a few countries in the world like us, but our animals stay outside 365 days of the year. Our beef animals, our sheep, are rarely yarded, are rarely corralled, and our dairy stock are yarded once or twice a day. And that is a thing. Once a day milking is actually a thing as well. So our solutions will be quite peculiar and very different to those types of systems where animals are housed. And the other thing that's quite unique about New Zealand is our emissions profile. 53% of our emissions come from agriculture, which is quite unique for a developed country. We don't have heavy industry, or not much, and the vast majority of our energy is renewable already. So we're pushing up on that 90% mark. So a lot of the low-hanging fruit that other countries have access to enable them to reduce their greenhouse gas footprint is not available to us. The other thing is all subsidies were removed from agriculture in the 1980s. Our farmers farm to a world price for their products. There's no subsidies in the system, and so they farm at a very efficient level relative to their peers around the world as well. So some of that low-hanging fruit in terms of efficiency gain has also been picked by us in the last 30 to 40 years. And here's an example of it. So our emission intensities, when you go back to 1990, have dropped by about 1% a year across all of our agricultural products. So the pint of milk I drink every morning for breakfast has a 30% lower footprint today than the pint of milk I drank for breakfast in 1990. Similar in our sheep flock. Our sheep flock has halved over that time, and yet our output of lamb has only decreased by 8%. So extraordinary improvements in efficiency through time, and those low-hanging fruit well and truly picked. We do an emissions reduction plan every 5 years, as I'm sure the vast majority of you do. And the good news is we've been on track. We succeeded in our first 5-year plan, and we're on track to succeed in our second 5-year plan. But of course, that's true taking those low-hanging fruit that still remain. It will get harder. Each 5 years will get harder, and that's why the discussions we're going to have over the next couple of days are really exciting for me to see what is coming on board. Key things for us, we've reviewed our methane science targets, amably presented on New Zealand's targets earlier this morning. So our goal is to reduce the long-lived gas to net zero by 2050, to reduce methane by 10% from 2017 by 2030, and to reduce it to somewhere between 24 and 47% by 2050. The government last year had an independent panel assess how much methane would have to be reduced to have no further effect on warming. And the purpose of that review is to define within that target range what will our ultimate target for 2050 be. And they will announce that sometime in the next couple of months. Keen to accelerate the development of mitigation tools, obviously. And the other thing is to develop on-farm emissions measurement or estimation, probably a better word, estimation, so that farmers know their numbers. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And we did have a plan in place to have a pricing mechanism by 2025. That was taken off the table last year by the government, or shall we say deferred until 2030 by the government to allow the development of emissions-reducing technology and in effect make sure that the sustainable pricing system was fair to all involved. So the standardized methodology, I chaired the technical advisory group, which was a group of industry and government scientists and industry stakeholders to develop a methodology that could be used by farmers. So there's not much point in putting together an accounting package that requires the data that farmers don't have access to. So what we've got is what's well beyond the minimum viable product, to be fair, but it is still a product that all farmers will be able to be used. That's been completed, and we have 12, up till now, we have had 12 methane or 12 greenhouse gas calculators across our agricultural system, and depending on which one you used, you got a slightly different result. So it was leading to inconsistency and confusion in the industry. Government accredited calculators in the future will have this one certified calculation, and therefore there should be one answer irrespective of the calculator used. And this will help us give confidence to farmers. Accelerating new mitigations. So the government has invested over $400 million through a number of initiatives, two key initiatives that will be discussed here by other members of the delegation. One is an additional $50 million going to the New Zealand Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Research Centre, and a very large public-private partnership, which for those of you that were in the audience yesterday is known as AgriZero NZ, and we'll probably get to talk about it more over the next couple of days. A very successful partnership to date, investing in novel technologies that will hopefully, some of them will at least, lead to mitigation strategies. And so our R&D priorities, Hayden Montgomery mentioned this yesterday afternoon as well. Top of our list is genetics. This is the low-hanging fruit, the permanent and additive solution that has been proven to be effective. We know we've got the heritability. We know we've got the genetic variation. And in New Zealand, Ag Research spearheaded the development of a sheep flock that has a 10% lower carbon footprint than a flock that hasn't been selected for methane. So we know that we can achieve gains through this. The emissions intensity graph that I showed you earlier shows that by selecting for efficiency, we've also had gains. We've got a piece of work happening at the moment to find out what is the balance between selecting for efficiency and selecting for reduced greenhouse gas emissions. Because if you select directly for reduced greenhouse gas emissions, you have to take selection pressure off efficiency traits. And what we don't want to do is select for greenhouse gas emissions and have no benefit in greenhouse gas emissions because we were already achieving it through selecting for efficiency. So there's a piece of work going on at the moment to find out what is the balance between those traits. Methane vaccines, the Holy Grail, or what I've described in the past as the Holy Grail, and I know we'll talk about it later today. I've become even more excited about the vaccine. I've stood in front of select committees a number of times over the last several years, promising that these mitigations were coming. And what's been uplifting for me is that each year I've made that promise in air quotes. The technologies have come forward 2 or 3 years. So there's an acceleration in the development of these technologies. And I think, everybody coming together in this room and the collaborations, the international collaborations we've seen is really accelerating these. And look, just to put that up there, this is just a pictograph of the different areas from genetics to low methane pasture varieties, manure management, which is a very small part. Actually, that's another unique feature of our New Zealand system. It's only about 4% of our greenhouse gas emissions nationally. Vaccine and other methane and nitrous oxide inhibitors. We had a graph of this up till a couple of years ago where there was absolutely nothing at the TRL, the high TRL side of this graph, the right-hand side of this graph. We're now looking at a number of them that are reaching that market readiness place. And that's hugely exciting, and I think we should take that as uplifting because this is no longer fatalistic. We will have solutions for farmers. How we get them to adopt those solutions is challenging. So look, I'll leave you with the wise words of Albert Einstein. The problems that have been created by previous thinking won't be solved by the same thinking. We need to move forward, and it really is encouraging to see the number of people that we have in the room here today to have these conversations. Really looking forward to the discussion. Thanks, Armias.